Okay, I think we're live, or we're recording right now, so I think we're good. Okay, I call this meeting to order at 7:05. Are there any additions to the agenda? Oh, yeah.
Not additions, but I would like to strike ASRF allocations and AAC travel mini grant allocations for this week, as well as the 2021-2022 academic year BBRC surplus allocation. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, Juan. Oh, yeah, also, like, if you got anything you want to take off too. Sorry, Juan.
Please strike SFS allocations.
Alicia.
Can you please check off ARC allocations?
And Phoebe.
Please strike TGIF allocation.
Devon.
Can you strike bag 2, please?
And Danny, so also, can we please strike BBRC surplus allocation too? Awesome. All right. If that's it, can we get a motion to approve?
Oh wait, Carl, do we have BBRC on here or? Oh wait, no, down here. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, can we get a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the agenda, or sorry, I move to approve the agenda.
Can we get a second?
I second. Divine.
Danny motions, Devon seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. I got 9 hands raised. All right. Alicia. Anna, Eliana, are y'all voting? Or okay. All abstaining, please raise your hand. Alicia, that's an old hand, right?
Yeah, sorry.
It's cool. And all against, please raise your hand. Okay, by a motion of 9-0, the agenda is approved. Okay, now for the minutes, I hope everyone was able to review the minutes. I think they just got sent out like yesterday, right? Can we get a motion to approve the minutes from last week, unless there's any changes?
What did you? I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Can we get a second?
I second.
All right, Sarah motions, Phoebe seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and by a vote of 10-0, the motion passed. The minutes are approved from last meeting. Okay, now we'll open it up for public comment. Public comment is a time for individuals to come and kind of talk to USAC and express their concerns regarding anything. So if you have any questions or concerns regarding anything and want to make a comment, please raise your hand now to be promoted. And I don't think we have anyone. Going once, going twice. All right. We're going to be closing public comment at 7:10. Okay. So now we'll get into funding. Jenny's not here, right? And we don't have anyone that has replaced her yet, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Jenny's here, and then we haven't appointed a new FICOM chair yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask about that too. Eliana's coming back. Yeah, we got to talk about I guess the the system that's taking the applications. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right. Can we get into, I guess we can strike capital contingency and contingency programming, even though we already approved the agenda. We'll go to SWC programming, fund allocations. That's fine, Eliana. Anna, are you able to talk?
Her computer's been connecting like for a minute, so I don't know if there's something wrong with her Wi-Fi or.
Got you. Okay, we can just, yeah, because I see it says connecting the audio. We can just come back to that. So we'll just go straight into special presentations by Phoebe, Juan, and Sarah on the USAC budget and stipend review. So without further ado, floor is yours.
Okay, I can start by sharing my screen. Just give me like 1 second. I have too many tabs open. But basically we made a quick presentation on like the main parts of the budget, just to share with y'all. Okay, here it is. And then I guess Patty can go. Oh, thank you, Divine. Patty can go after to clarify yeah, okay, cool. All right, let me do slideshow and then share screen. Okay. Perfect. Just making sure, can y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Loading, but we can see it. Oh, there we go.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll start and then Phoebe and Juan just jump in. But so we are the budget review committee and we've been just like looking at the budget and we basically just like checked if everything added up. And then we had a meeting with Patty and Jessica to see like any concerns that we had. Basically, so the budget has a bunch of different tabs. So for the total budget tab, the total income is this amount, about 9.7 mil, and the total expenses is 9.6 mil, and then the additional net funds go to USAC members that don't have referendum funds. And the increase in the original budget is an increase from last year, and that's due to the estimated number of students for the incoming school year, and each student pays a $10 flat rate. Phoebe
Yeah.
I guess, okay, go.
For sure. The overhead tab, which denotes expenses of sorry, I can't read numbers right now. $1,055,330. Fields that increased for the most part are stipends. It's based off of the California minimum wage, as we got that email from Patty. So originally from the spreadsheet last 2 weeks ago, the stipends did look a little bit higher for officers, potentially some of the other positions too, but they've been since adjusted to the California minimum wage, which is how they were voted in the first place, and not like the LA County minimum wage. For the most part, besides like stipends that's increased, payroll has also increased, as well as admin support services. So that's stuff like SGA, SGS, like all of the people that like help us with all of the different paperwork and administrative work for running USAC and our relevant committees. We can go into the budget spreadsheet later on to describe why exactly that might be, but the most flexibility that we have with negotiating the budget is this overhead tab, given that most of the other income and expenses are referendum fees that are already allocated to places that they need to go. And it's good to know that maintenance and utilities have decreased in cost within this year's budget.
And so one of the other tabs in the budget is the e-board tab, where we allocate budgets for stipends for the election board, as well as advertising under the Daily Bruin, and then supplies and programming under the My UCLA. And so where we left off, kind of like our conversation in the budget committee and with all of us who joined, brought up by Eliana, is kind of like, how do we strategize to improve voter turnout for the next election cycle for USAC? And so that's, I guess, something that we might want to start discussing at today's meeting before we approve the budget about that budget allocation. But to end us off, I want to thank Sarah for putting this presentation together, and Phoebe and Sarah and Eliana for working so hard. And thank you to Patty and Jessica for answering all of our questions. Y'all have been so amazing in helping us understand and wrap our head around this very detailed aspect of our jobs.
Great job. Thank you. Thank you all so much for that. That was very detailed. Thank you. All right. We don't have any appointments tonight. But I guess if Patty or Jessica can speak to the whole system update that's happening right now, because I know there's a lot of people have applied for positions, but we can't like review them yet, correct?
Yeah, so I can give a quick update. I met with Karen, and then I'm blanking on her name, the other person who's actually like helping with the programming of the appointment system. Yeah, Kathy, thank you. So I talked to Karen and Kathy today, and the site is pretty much ready to launch live, and everybody who is on the appointments search committee and the appointments review committee, your name and UID have been sent to Kathy to input you as like an administrative user into the system, so that you'll be actually able to log in and then see all the applications, review them, forward them for interview, things like that. So I believe that everything's ready to go, and it should be launching this week to be like live on the website. But to my understanding, everybody with an account should already have access, and I believe you have to log in through your My UCLA account to access it. But if you didn't receive like instructions for how to access, or you don't see that view in your when you log into My UCLA, let me know so I can reach out to Kathy and ask her to resend. And then she is willing to come to like your next council meeting, or if we need to meet sooner than that, we can schedule a time with her to come in the next week, so that once you all get in the system and view it and see if there's any adjustments that need to be made, or if you need more information, she can come. Sorry. She can come and do like a tutorial for you all. So I guess if you haven't been able to access, if you can just let me know, and then I'll ask her to re-forward the information of how to like log in and get on the site. But everything should be up and running, so you should be able to get in there and review your applicants.
Okay, thank you so much, Jessica. I appreciate that. All right, now because we got a lot of appointments to make, so we need to start those this summer so we can get the ball rolling. All right, and then we'll get into officer reports. For me, just the last 2 weeks, I just been like obviously finishing hiring and onboarding for my director. So finished hiring everyone and just kind of doing training in regards to USAC and just like what this, I guess, job would typically entail. Also had a meeting with the COVID response and recovery task force about just things going forward in regards to school. Okay, you sending that to Jessica. Basically, they're making a decision in regards to like whether they want to keep the clearance requirement, like the little hey, show the clearance form. So they haven't really made a decision on that yet, but we're kind of discussing that with the rest of the professors and stuff that are on the committee. I just been meeting also with some other members of different organizations on campus, just kind of like let them know like, hey, this is what USAC is, just getting the word out on what USAC is. So that's pretty much what I've been doing over the past 2 weeks, and I'll pass it to Milan.
Yeah, so over the past 2 weeks, I've just been working on like developing my staff. So I already hired all of my directors. So we've been hosting bi-weekly meetings with directors to kind of onboard them and get them kind of acclimated to the USAC space and the IVP space. And then we're also working on developing directors with training materials and office-wide development so that they can have the resources to implement their initiatives. As for general staff hiring, we just finished applications and we might open them up for another cycle depending on what committees are still in need of staff. But directors are reviewing applications right now, and then they're sending out interview requests soon. So if anyone has applied for the general staff of the IVP office, hopefully they'll hear from us soon. And lastly, we're working on developing our business plans for directors and then developing the director initiatives for next year. But yeah, that's what we're doing so far. And I'll pass it to Divine.
Hi everyone, I hope you guys' summer is going well so far. For our office, we have officially finished our initial rounds of hiring. We have hired all of our staff and directors so far. We'll open up staff hiring again in the fall, but for the summer, in the meantime, we have fully hired and we are extremely happy about that. Our first all staff meeting is tomorrow night. If you want to join, it's open obviously to the public, so feel free to 6 to 7. Obviously via Zoom, and then also our director meeting, our first all director meetings tomorrow as well. Other than that, we've been prepping, setting up internal and external organization meetings just to build relationships for folks that we're going to be working with closely this upcoming school year. So that's kind of what the main goals of the directors will be this entire summer. We've also been prepping for the UCSA orientation that's happening this weekend, and then also prepping for SOS, which is when there will be UCSA will be picking the kind of main topics and issues that we'll be focusing on. If you're interested in attending SOS, it's August 5th through 7th, and it is in Pasadena, and it's open to all students from the UC system. So if you're interested, the EVP office will obviously be taking everyone that is welcome. So please let me know, and then also be on the lookout for more information soon. And besides that, Carl and I met with someone from Austin in regards to student loan relief, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that within the coming weeks. Yeah, that's what our office has been doing.
Eliana?
Thank you so much, Carl. So me and Geronimo Thomas, who's awesome and my partner on a lot of stuff I'm working on, I've been working on an event, and shout out to our president, Carl, for helping with the funding. Shout out to Blue and Guardian Scholars Association for their work on this, and Reggie Miles, one of our performers. So that's going to be happening Friday. Come through if you want to. People would love to see you. It'll be 1 p.m. I think Canyon Point. I should be posting about it a bit more. Thanks for all your support. Also, Divine and I have been working with the Jewish Free Loan Association on getting support for a very important and very good proposal they have, that they're asking California State Legislature to get $30 million so they can provide an expansion of free loans for low and middle income students in the UCs, Cal States, community colleges. So shout out to Divine for her work on that. I also have a resolution I'll be presenting. Thank you, Divine. And those have been my focuses recently. So really appreciate the support I've gotten from everyone here and in the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Juan?
Hi, everyone. So these past 2 weeks, I've worked on finishing interviewing and hiring for our open positions in the Community Service Commission. I've also worked with Sarah, Neliana, and Phoebe, and Patty and Jessica to get a little more details on the budget. And then I've also started working closely with Alternative Breaks, one of our projects to renewing kind of like our agreements for the next year and how we can best allocate resources to alternative breaks as well as more projects under the Community Service Commission. So yeah.
Thank you. Next we have Sarah.
For financial support, yes, I've mostly been working on the budget. So I was at the meeting with Juan and Phoebe. And then also I have started a little bit on the CRC appointment and then also just hiring.
Awesome, thank you. Next is Theodore.
Yes. Yeah, I was able to meet with the director of the TSC today. I don't know if anyone has been aware with what's going on with the transfer community, but essentially there's a lot of anxiety in regards to housing. I've been gone these past couple of weeks, and so my emails are flooded with the same narrative, essentially that many students feel like there's a bit of inequity going on in regards to like who gets to live on the Hill and who gets to live off campus. And so another issue is a lot of the new, we're fortunate at UCLA that we have a lot of new housing, but I think the issue right now, there has not been a lot of photography taken of the newer sites. And so that has kind of caused a lot of anxiety for many transfer students because they don't know exactly like what they're getting themselves into in regards to the place that they'll be using for their stay at UCLA next year. And so on Friday, I will be joining. I'll be touring some of the sites and just seeing what's exactly the transfer students or many students who many are transfers will be receiving next year. And so yeah, I'm just trying to answer all these emails that have been flooded my way. I'm trying to put together my staff and work one-on-one with the TSC. I'll be in contact with them throughout the entire summer. I'm pretty much free. So I think I'm just trying to get as much training as possible to really be effective in my role this year. And if you guys have any advice or any other narratives that you've heard in regards to what's been plaguing the transfer community, please let me know. And it's good to be back and really start working for the transfers.
Awesome, thank you so much. Hansika isn't here, so we'll go straight into admin reps. Josh, is Josh here? Josh is not here.
I think Josh and Orlando are not here today.
Okay, awesome. We can start with you then, Jessica.
Okay, just a couple quick things for student government services. So we'll probably be reaching out to some offices individually, including some student organization offices. Archie and I did a walkthrough of some Kirchhoff office spaces today, just to kind of get an update as of, where OSAC left off with the move in, move out. And I know there was a lot of new furniture purchased last year. So we just wanted to check on the status and condition of these spaces to make sure we're getting them ready for, all the students returning back for fall. And there were a handful of offices that are still, safety hazards and fire hazards with just the amount of stuff that's in the office space in the middle of the floor and kind of not making it accessible to enter the space. And then, there's also, just different issues with some hazardous materials being stored in some of the offices like paint. So, we just took some photos of what we, kind of need to urgently address. And we're going to individually reach out to those office holders and see if we can, if there's anybody from your office around, this goes for student organizations too. If there's anybody around during the summer right now, we're happy to meet in person in Kirchhoff so we can kind of show you what we're talking about and see how we can help get it cleared and resolved while we're in the summer and it's easier for us to get a bin, do large item removal. These projects are really great to do before students are back on campus. So if there's any questions about that, let me know. And then some of your offices I know definitely had some, older furniture. So if any of you are thinking about requesting funds through capital contingency to update your furniture, let us know. We can help assist with that and make sure we get any items that need to be disposed of removed from your office space. We can help with, carpet cleaning, repainting, things like that. All of those requests go through Student Government Services. So we definitely want to make sure that your offices are in good working condition for you all to be there starting in fall when many of you are back. So just let us know how we can support. And like I said, we'll be reaching out to those of you who have kind of more urgent needs we got to get addressed. And we'll make sure we take care of that in the next couple weeks or so. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Phoebe, I see you got your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a question regarding that just because I'm not sure that anyone from my office is around, but I feel like my office is definitely one of those concern offices. And I was curious, if there's an urgent deadline to clear the floor of my office, is there something that I should do to coordinate with somebody else to help out, or is there something that I can kind of address later?
Yeah. So Archie will be reaching out to let you know which spaces were kind of the more urgent need to take care of. I can tell you just off the top of my head, FAC was not that bad. It was a little bit cluttered, but it wasn't at the top of the list of having either hazardous materials. Some offices have paint and things stored there that are a fire hazard. Some offices there were things blocking windows or doorways. So things like that is more, we're trying to address the safety issues first before anybody's going in there and possibly, having any issues with just accessing the space in general. So FAC was okay, so I wouldn't worry. But we will let you know. And then if you are one of the offices that are in urgent need and you don't have anybody at all that can be available, we can coordinate someone to help, clear the items or remove the items. But we'll probably have to just hop on a Zoom or something and just let you know, the items that we're going to clear out, we're going to have to recycle or dispose of. So just as long as that y'all are aware of that, because unfortunately, we don't have anywhere else to store things temporarily. So it really is it needs to move out and either be recycled, thrown away if it's trash, or, hauled away if it's a large item. And, we don't have the capacity to store anything like that. So if there is a situation where nobody's available and we have an urgent need to get the space cleared, we'll try to do our best to figure out a resolution and work with you all. And, if we can't, I feel like we'll just address that when we get there. But I feel like for the most part, we'll be able to, work with you and try to accommodate as much as we can.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Patty?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I just want to first say thank you. It was such a great opportunity the last couple of weeks to meet with so many of you all to discuss the budget. And it was just so, I just appreciate so much the time and thought that you put into all of our discussion and great questions. And I'm definitely better for it. So I just want to say big shout out and thank you. And then also great presentation today, and look forward to talking to about that in more detail a little bit later tonight. In regards to what's going on in our student union services side of house, we have started our first day of orientation was yesterday. So all the incoming students, there's 10 orientations taking place throughout the summer. We just had the first day. Today is day 2 of the first orientation. So many students, I feel like they had almost 600, maybe a little bit more. Tomorrow we are doing our tours around the union. So really excited to have the opportunity to speak with incoming students about all the ways they can get involved in the services of ASUCLA. If we are also hiring at ASU-CLA. So if any of you all have anyone in your offices or looking for additional employment opportunities in the summer or come into fall, ASU-CLA has so many student jobs open and looking for amazing students to help fill them. ASU-CLA could not run without the amazing students that work for our association. So definitely share that out if you have anyone that's interested in employment. Even our office is definitely looking for some new hires. And then those are the main things, just getting ready to get the budget approved. If you haven't already coordinated a time to meet to discuss if you have referendum and how you want to divide up your budget going into the school year, the next few weeks are the ideal time to do that. We want to take advantage of this time to look at what was done previously, what you want to do and prioritize this year, so we can make those budget transfers. Once the budget is approved, we can move forward getting those all transferred over so it's ready to go come August. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Patty. I know we don't have Archie down here, but Archie?
Good evening. How you doing?
Doing good. How you doing?
Pretty good, sir.
Do you have does Archie give a report or?
Yeah, so Archie, this is kind of like, I think your first like full meeting after being hired. So basically the admin report time is just a space where if you have any updates, you're free to give. If you don't, you can just say there's no updates. But yeah, we'll make sure if Milan, if you don't mind adding Archie's name into the agenda, this way he'll be on the regular rotation. But yeah, so that's what this time is. Sorry, forgot to remind you, Archie.
Yeah.
But no pressure if you don't have any updates.
Yeah, there's no updates from me. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me.
All right, awesome. Yeah, we'll add you on there. And then next we got Steven.
Hello, everyone. I'll keep my remarks fairly brief. I think there's not much to update on beyond the fact that the next alumni board meeting is going to take place towards the end of August. So if there's anything that you would like me to bring to that meeting, we should definitely start strategizing before then. So I would like to play more of an active role if possible. I think traditionally the alumni rep is fairly an advisory capacity, but I would like to get to know each and all of you slowly over the coming year and see if there's any way I can help more actively. I believe Giovanna reached out to the Alumni Association this past week to look at Bruin Bash sponsorship. I do not know how that particular conversation went, but in general, please feel free to reach out to me at any point. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be reaching out to you soon, actually. So next we got the old business, which is the USAC budget discussion, which is tonight. I think we should, be approving the budget. So Patty, do you got? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Again, thank you for that initial presentation to kind of go over some of the highlights. So I'm going to pull up the budget document once again. I did email this out to everyone a few times actually over the last couple of weeks, just so everyone had a chance to review and then see the final version. So let me pull up this page. And I know I went over this in detail last week, so I wanted this to be a little bit more of our open dialogue, answer any questions that you may still have. I'm going to just do a quick run through of the budget and what you would be voting on this evening. So essentially, this is our preliminary USAC budget. After we vote on this today, on Friday, this will be sent over to the ASU-CLA Board of Directors to be on their finance committee agenda for next week, and then that will get voted and approved through finance and then to the board of directors. Essentially what they will be voting on is fiscal soundness. So what that means is the money coming in with fund accounting, all the money that comes in each year has to then, once the expenses are going to be sent out that one fiscal year, the bottom has to be a positive number. So the board is looking to make sure the number at the bottom is not negative, essentially, and that, you know, everything adds up and looks accurate. So I'll be doing this presentation to the board as well. So as we discussed earlier, the first top of the section, this would be the budget breakdown that we'd be voting on today, hopefully, if we answer everyone's questions. So that would be able to activate that you'll be having access to your funds start August 1st. So this is all of your income at the top section that I went over last week. And then the bottom are all of your expenses. So a lot of these expenses are directly tied to your fees. So the referendum fee is coming in and then it's being expensed out to be used for that referendum. So I know there's some discussion on overhead, so I wanted to pull this up again. So this is kind of a breakdown of the overhead. As you can see, as mentioned in the initial presentation, the stipends did go up slightly due to the California minimum wage. And I apologize for originally sending it with the LA County. ASUCLA on the services and enterprise side of house uses LA County, and USAC was using California. So I did make that adjustment. And then we did go over our administrative support service overhead in a little bit more detail, and I'm happy to go over that. So let me actually pull up one other document. I can kind of show that really quick. I'm going to stop share for a second so I can pull it up. And hopefully this doesn't add additional to the confusion, but I think it's important to show where our numbers come from. So essentially, these are the breakdown for USA for our administrative cost. We have our career wages, student wages, which stayed the same as last year. Career wages did increase slightly. The one as you can see, starting January is where we're bringing in that additional asset, as we discussed last week. The one thing I did for the career wages, which I went over in more detail last week with the budget review directors or budget review team, was I took the actuals from last year's wages. Last year, we were a little under budget on what we had budgeted. So I'm going to show you one additional document. And so the differential seems a little bit larger on the wages. Oops. Perfect. Okay. So I know this was a question that came up. So what I had done is took the actuals. So as you can see, what was budgeted last year was $23,420 per month. And then what was actually hitting per month was closer to $24,793 for wages. The reason for that is there was a merit increase of 3% last year for standard of living cost increase with inflation that was not in the budget. So every month we were kind of going over our budget. So what I really wanted to make sure is our budget this year was as close and accurate as possible. So I took our actuals and I essentially added the 4.5%, which goes into effect actually July 1. So I wanted to kind of show that to give a little bit of background where the 25 per month came from. And then, so when we actually look into the budget from last year and the budget from this year, the only areas that we really made any significant adjustments, I'll show you really quick, was just the wages based on that standard of living increase. And then that directly correlates with benefits because benefits are an equation based on career wages. So it's 4.63% or 46.3% of wages is the benefit. So that's where you'll have those increases there. Telephones, office supplies all remain the same. And then audit services on average goes up 3% a year. So I budgeted in the 3% increase of inflation. So I'll go back Does that make sense? I just wanted to show more detail because I know that was a question that came up. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the main budget really quick. A few other areas were the stipends. So I have that broken out in each of these tabs. These are your officer stipends, and that's where we get the $196,650. We have both a summer stipend rate and a yearly stipend rate. And then the California minimum wage goes into effect, increases by 50 cents starting January. So that's why there's a slight difference between the stipend rate starts in September and the stipend rate start January. We also have stipend rates that are for the J board, the FICOM and team, budget review director, CS mini fund team, election board team. And one of the things that came into question a couple times in the overhead is, why isn't it this number? Why isn't on the overhead 24,428, for example? And when I put it in, it's actually 24,778. That's because we gave some funding for supplies. So if they have printing needs, or they need to get a nameplate, or they have to get, you know, things for their office, pens and pencils, all those different items, they do receive some funding for office supplies. And the one thing I do want to show in a little bit more detail is election board, because I know that was mentioned a little bit earlier. So I want to open that up if there's any discussion. Is we budget election board not only for the stipends, but also for various supplies. Election board does a lot of marketing needs to market out your programs, and that, you know, elections are open, applications are open, supplies. And then also for the MyUCLA, there's some costs associated with having things up on the MyUCLA. And so one of the discussions were the advertising costs, and could there be a reduction in some of those advertising costs? The one thing that I'm realizing that I'm not necessarily seeing here in our budget is event costs. Sometimes they'll go to contingency or look for other forms of funding for the events, but there is the endorsement hearings. We've talked about maybe wanting to do some get out the vote type programs. So it may be an opportunity, again, if we're not looking to change the budget, perhaps what we're doing is redirecting those funds to reduce the advertising, or maybe there's new forms of advertising we want to budget into, and we can use that for some programming. So I know the budget review committee had some thoughts on this. So I just wanted to open it up because we can still make some edits if that's something you're interested in discussing.
Yeah, so I assume that people are going to have questions about this advertising, given that, you know, not all of us know whether newspaper ads are the most effective form of marketing to UCLA students today. And I was curious to what extent people like felt about this or wanted to decrease the funding amount for like half page or like full page ads. There was discussion about initially maybe reducing it to like 50% and then like maybe reallocating some of that money to, say, like booking like Dinev Auditorium, which is where I know they held debates last year. So yeah.
Perfect. And the one thing, just so I can, another thing that we can note is you don't necessarily have to follow these exact guidelines of, oh, sorry, Jessica's hands up too. You don't necessarily have to follow these exact guidelines. This is just our way of kind of estimating what we think the best allocation could be. So when I'm having you all meet with our, election board, what we usually will do too is work with them to say, here's your budget. This is, what we've allocated previously. And they have some wiggle room as to how they want to allocate those funds. So this is almost a guide for us to just kind of give a best guesstimate of what we think the cost would be for that board to be able to function well. So it can just also be a discussion once you appoint your election board to say, here's your allocation of budget, and you have some wiggle room as to how you want to allocate that. Do you want to spend more money on programming and less on print advertising, maybe boosting on social? So it doesn't have to be used for exactly these purposes, if that makes sense.
Eliana?
Thanks. So yeah, I just want to say, first of all, turnout in our elections was 15.93% turnout. Last year, when there weren't the same particular circumstances we had this year, was under 20%. So I feel like some sort of overhaul would be smart. And probably, I think a few things. First of all, might want to survey the students and ask why most of them aren't voting. I'm sure they have their reasons. It'd be interesting to know what it is. Maybe we could do something about that. I don't know if surveys would cost money, but it might be worth either allocating that or just putting that down as something to do. The second thing I was considering was radio advertising on UCLA radio. I feel like that might be a nice thing to branch into. So yeah, those are my suggestions if anyone's, and so we can possibly reallocate some funding towards those purposes.
Yeah, thank you, Eliana. What I'm kind of getting from this whole conversation is just like it's not really a conversation to have now. It's something to have once we actually elect an election, or we vote in an election boards person. Because to be correct, to be specific, right? You Jessica, you did, or Patty, I'm sorry, you did say that specifically the person, just because it says this on the document, the person doesn't have to necessarily spend that on the certain item, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, because I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Palmer, like this year, I think he probably used most of his like advertising funds like on social media, right? So, and that's not even budgeted up here. So they have wiggle room. It's just, that's going to take a discussion when we actually pick an election board chair. So we got to make sure we pick the right person and have a discussion with them to make sure that they're like kind of following this advice and these guidelines. So
yeah, Carl, that's exactly right. I think that's we're just giving them essentially an office budget for them then to determine the best ways to utilize those funds, similar to every office that has referendum, any office that has a budget in their council. You all then work with your teams to decide, oh, like SWC, I want to send this amount of money for SWC run walk. I want to use this on programming. I want to use this on assistance and on supplies. So you have that wiggle room. And once we determine that, I'm happy to adjust this, amend this for years going forward if we want to set kind of a new standard of what we think works best for council.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's something we can make part of the like hiring process. We can be like, hey, person applying, if you had $16,000, how would you spend it? You know, and they can like for advertising purposes or whatever. We could just like make that a part of the process as well if that's something everyone wants to do. Yeah. So I think, is that it?
Yeah, those are the main items. And then I will go back to this page. I know, oh, Phoebe, go ahead.
All right, just to like reiterate, like, I guess like why I brought up the like newspaper ads concern is because like I know that it is like contingent on the elections board to make those decisions for themselves, but I feel like $16,000 is a lot of money. And I feel like we should like provide, like, even if they do like kind of go off script a little, I feel like we should provide more direction. Like if they're not going to spend it on newspaper ads, then perhaps maybe they will spend it on something that costs less, and we should then allocate them potentially less money. Just because I know a lot of the USAC offices also themselves, I mean, it depends on like how much is left over, but a lot of them only have $2,250 in their budgets. And I know that like there is like, I guess, a potential for them to like lack the funds necessary to like either like pay their directors or like do some of their own programming. So I think it's like important to me as like one of those offices, I guess I'm a little biased, that doesn't have referendum fees, to like figure out like where in the budget like funds are not potentially being allocated to the best, and like then that can be spread among like all of the other offices that don't necessarily have like as large of a budget.
Sarah?
I had a different question, but let's stay on this because I want to respond, I guess, to Phoebe's point. Phoebe, I agree with you. I just don't, as I'm also one of those offices as well. I just don't want to slash anyone's budget because I think it's also slash anyone's budget, first of all, without talking to someone who has experience in the elections board, because I personally don't, to see how much money they need, but also to do anything like with it, because I think the election board also has like I guess the or I'm trying to think of the correct word, like has an obligation to advertise like fully and properly to the student body.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both for that. Does anyone else have any other comments about this or anything they want to add to this? Because it seems like the discussion here is to whether we lower the amount that the that election board gets or keep it the same, basically. Yeah, Steven?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the Daily Bruin is a partner organization of USAC and ASU-CLA, and so that's something to keep in mind, that this money goes towards hiring students to be a part of that organization.
Thank you.
And it is also in the guidelines of council that you have to fully advertise, as mentioned before, which is why it was placed as budget items.
Thank you, Patty. Eliana?
I want to point out that will probably be easier to lower allocations now and make an additional surplus allocation than to change allocations if we decide they were too high later on.
That is true. So now that you've brought up surplus, I just want to explain that in a little bit more detail if not everyone is fully aware. So this is what we call, and I'll go back to the main page, our initial budget. And as you see here, there's a tab that says revised budget. So last year, there were additional revisions that happened after, usually during the end of fall quarter, in the beginning of winter quarter. So how that works is once we're done with our audit, which is why we're like, turn in all your recs so we can close our books. So the month of August is spent really closing our books so we can prepare for the audit. And with that is us determining exactly how much money is carrying over from unspent expenditures from the previous year. And then determining what is restricted, what's not restricted, and then having that final number at the end to then bring back to council during fall quarter to have you then have an opportunity, usually during winter break, to determine some projects or special initiatives that you'd like to bring forward to the council for review and vote come winter quarter. That is then voted on by the council for various different initiatives. So that could perhaps be, oh, we want to have a get out the vote program that may not have been initially in your budget. That being said, we don't know what that surplus number is yet. So we never want to, pre-spend mentally funding that we haven't received yet, but there always is at least some surplus that goes over year to year. But I like to think of it as little cups of money from all these different accounts that are left unspent or unexpended, and then that kind of rolls up into the surplus. There's also one other thing that usually comes out towards the end of summer or right at the beginning of fall is what I usually will present to council as anticipated surplus. So let's say there is a big project that you all need to support at the beginning of fall quarter. Sometimes this is usually books for Bruin, sometimes it's helping with Bruin Bash. That needs a little bit additional support. So what I can do is look at how the numbers are, panning out. But again, we don't have the official audit final number yet. And I give a conservative number that I feel comfortable allocating prior to having the official number. So it's usually around 20%, 20 to 40% of what I think your allocation will be come winter. So that's another opportunity to activate some of your surplus. So this again is your initial budget. for approval. But once it is approved, those funds will be going into the various accounts based on this budget.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anyone else that wants to give comment on this, or because we're supposed to be voting on this tonight, like approving the budget?
Yeah,
So,
I'm happy to answer any other questions. And then when we do go for a vote, it would just be to approve the USA budget for the 22-23 academic year.
yes, Danny.
Yeah, I do just have a question, and it's okay if y'all don't have the answer to this right now. But I know that some folks have brought up the point about like wanting to see how those expenses are made on eBoards, and just so that we can make a more informed decision. I agree with that sentiment. I feel like I would really benefit from seeing something like that if it's available, which I think also raises my main question. If there are any established protocols or guidelines in regards to like transparency between eBoard and USAC to see how those expenses are being made, because I know just from like running, there are expense account forms that are supposed to be released to the public for candidates. And I noticed that those weren't published for this previous election cycle. So I think I just want to make sure that there's transparency to the student body, but also USAC as those elected to make these allocations and ensure that students' fees are being spent correctly.
Of course. Well, there's kind of two different things that you're talking about there. There is the election board budget that comes out of student fees. And that is all in detail on our budget breakdown. So for example, I can show you what we have on our USAC website. And again, this isn't fully up to date because we're still working on closing out all of those accounts. So when I was talking to you all about meeting with our finance team, so we can go over, you know, how much you want to, i.e. allocate to supplies, how much to hospitality. Here's election board, there's funding for assistants, supplies, graphics, Daily Brew and advertising facilities. And then I can look back into last year's, but I'll have to get that back exactly what was expended. But all this information is then listed in our USAC website, so you can see all of those details. When there is, in regards to candidates, it seems like you're asking about how candidates were spending their expenses. Those dollars aren't coming through our ASU accounting department, so I might not have as much detail on that. That would be something you need to work with in more detail with our election board. Neil, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sarah, you got your hand raised.
Sorry, Carl, did you call on me? My
Yeah, you got your hand raised, right?
Oh, yes. Sorry, my internet went in and out. I had a question for Patty as well. So for budgeting, I know we're just approving a preliminary budget tonight. So once we get our appointment for eBoard, is there a way to, if we want to lessen the budget for eBoard, is that a possibility, or what we vote on tonight for eBoard is that's how much they're getting?
Once we vote tonight, that will be the funding that gets placed into their account. If you decide that you want to transfer that money and reallocate it to a different purpose, you would have to have a full vote of council to do that. But yeah, it is a little bit more difficult to remove funds once budgeted than it is if you're trying to make adjustments and then wanting to add. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jessica. She put the expenses right there on from their website. So that is something that I think if we're looking at adjusting similar to, because then they're going to start planning. So if it's very difficult to take funds away. Just like if we, let's say, budget for your offices to receive, you know, the remainder of, let's say, 2,000. It's one thing to add additional resources. It's a little bit more, you know, difficult to remove resources once they've been budgeted. So I think that that's something to look into. And then once they are reduced, then the only option to give funding to them is, unless we're looking at funding these specific programs through contingency or different funding bodies that they'd have to apply to, would be through your surplus. So if you're not allocating during this budget process, they're not going to be able to receive those funds unless it's voted on through surplus, and that will not be available until January, most likely.
Awesome.
Would anyone be interested in moving to, I think people were suggesting reducing the page and half page allocations by 50%. Would anyone be interested in considering a motion on that subject, or should we just vote on the budget?
Feel like I mean, it seems like a little formal to do a motion, but I also think it'll be helpful for all of us to know like where people stand. So perhaps like motioning on these could be helpful.
Okay, in that case, I move to reduce the page and half page allocations by 50%, subject to possible reversal via the surplus process.
I would second that, but Jessica, did you have something to say on like that point?
I can wait if you want to continue, but I was gonna say something about keyboard.
Go ahead, I suppose. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so I just wanted to let you know, I'm messaging Fernando right now just to double check if he is able to see what the actual expenses were for eBoard regarding advertising from this past election season. I don't think it's currently updated on the budget report that's on the USAC website because some requisitions are still in process. So he'll need about 5 to 10 minutes, but hopefully he'll be able to pull that. But I did want to also just mention, just in conversations around elections time in prior years, Daily Bruin is always really open to working with whatever the budget is. So I guess I'm just saying that to let you all know if you feel like you do need to make some adjustments to the advertising. You know, it is a high cost for advertising through Daily Bruin, but you know, I think that's a conversation once your election board chair is in place, inviting somebody from the Daily Bruin to talk about what their pricing is and kind of come up with a package that works for the budget that they have. You know, they're willing to do that, and they've done that in prior years as well. So just to at least give you some reassurance that, you know, if that's the decision you all want to go with, to reduce some of that budget, I think you still can make it work for elections. And then, you know, as was already mentioned too, if there ends up needing to be additional costs for advertising, you know, you can also always allocate at a later point some additional advertising dollars. But the main thing that, you know, if you do lower that amount now, it does somewhat impact future year budgets because it'll show that they had a lower advertising budget to start with. And then, you know, if it's always harder to ask for more funds, you know, than to reduce them. So just something else to keep in mind, that if you are going to reduce what is an election board's budget, you know, it's really hard. It's much harder to find those dollars to put back in. If it ends up being that it wasn't enough funding and they did need more, it's really hard to build it back into the budget. So just some things to consider.
Okay.
Yes, I see we got some hands raised. Phoebe.
Okay, before we move on with like the motion, if we're still doing that, sorry, that was a little confusing, but I wanted to ask, I guess, for clarification, just because I know like Fernando is probably going to send us more updated information in a bit, but there's still information on the USAC website right now that I just want like help like interpreting as relates to the eBoard budget. I can't share my screen, but I think it was the page that Patty was sharing earlier, page
Sure, I'll pull that up. Let me.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious. I mean, one, I'm not sure like how drastic the difference will be like with the new requisitions, just because I know it's like pretty backed up and there's probably a lot of forms and paperwork that aren't reflected here. But just seeing that bottom row and like the expenses column of this page, it seems like there wasn't as many expenditures as was allocated money, as we saw like with the spreadsheet. So like it is allocated currently in the next year's budget around $16,000 for Daily Bruin advertising, but they only spent 103 here. And then like same for graphics, 700 is allocated, but on that page they only spent 173.
I'm gonna go look back on previous years because so much of our funding has not been completely finalized. So I want to go back to kind of a normal election year, just so you can get a sense, because this year will be back to a normal election year.
Sarah, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, I mean, I want to think about what Phoebe just showed. I was just wondering if Phoebe or if Eliana or anyone who is open to lowering their budget, if you would be open to like cutting it less than 50%, or do you want to stay at 50%?
Yeah. What do you think would Phoebe and Sarah, what do you think would be ideal numbers for this?
I don't know. I feel like it's hard to say just because like, obviously I haven't been a part of elections board. I think Patty like pulling up the numbers will definitely help a lot in having that decision. But my reasoning for 50%, which might not be really founded in any like the way elections board thinks, but my logic was like, okay, there's like 13 like full page ads, right? And the election is maximum 6 weeks in spring quarter. Perhaps you'll have some advertisements at the end of winter quarter to get candidates to like, sign up to like participate in the election. So that's like what, 8 weeks, not like 13. And I guess like having more than one ad per week could be helpful, but I also think that like, I mean, I don't know how many people read the Daily Bruin or got their advertising from the Daily Bruin, but I feel like weekly is enough, which is why I said 50%. That is my reasoning, but obviously like I don't actually know how advertising for the elections board actually worked.
That's a good reasoning, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I would agree with you. I mean, obviously we haven't done any polling. I don't know how effective Daily Bruin ads would be. I'm just thinking slashing it. I was thinking that we would probably like work with the election board to do some different way of advertising that is not one through the Daily Bruin. And then two, I just think if we're cutting it by 50%, we can like reassign that money, but once we take it away, it may make it harder for them in future years to do more advertising, especially as we're going most likely like at least more in person next year, or offering at least hybrid options, which may cost some money for like debates and stuff. That I'm not entirely sure. But that's why I was thinking maybe like cutting it 25%. So because I don't want to take like I'm not saying all that money, I agree, should not be used for the Daily Bruin. I'm just thinking of looking at like different options to hype up the election.
Yeah.
Maybe we could cut the Daily Bruin part 50%, and maybe we could put half of the cut into new election board fund, just called new outreach and advertising methods, to be worked out later, and the other 25% could be allocated among USAC offices which lack our referendum base.
Yeah. And then again, just to clarify, us voting on this budget is not them detailing out their expenditures. This is just our way of budgeting based on, in the past, this has been similar cost breakdowns for us to get an idea of what we should put in their allocation. And then they can then determine how they want to do this. So looking back, this is the budget from 1819, just because this was the last like kind of standard in-person full election. And as you can see, they put funding towards their programming facility costs. They put, $5,500 towards Daily Bruin advertising. They put candidate expenditure funds, assistance. So they broke things up a little bit differently each year. They've kind of broken it up a little bit differently. So Again, we don't have to get into that much detail tonight. This is just your overall, how much money you're putting into their account to allocate. So, you know, 2 years ago, they received a total allocation of 38, or this is the 18-19, which would be similar to what the allocation would be if we reduced a little bit from this year. But I just wanted to explain, we don't have to get into that much specifics at this point.
All right. It seems like, you know, there's like a little debate on this. I mean, we can do a motion to, I guess, cut it by 50% or 25%. And then we can decide there. I guess my question was, if you were going to cut it by 50%, where was the rest of that funding going to go towards, or where were you thinking that would go to?
So I could show that. So essentially that would go down to your remainder. So I made the adjustment. And so now instead of the remainder being 21, it's 30, and you're at 3,300 for the 9 offices. So again, that's the adjustment that would make.
Okay.
So I know a lot of council members that don't receive referendum usually ask for the surplus allocation, because, you know, a larger cut to one area when divided up by 9 doesn't make as large of an impact on some of the others. But yeah, this is totally up to your discretion as to how you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I can also do it based on it being.
Yeah.
Oops, that's wrong.
All right. So, I mean, unless someone wants to make a motion to, I guess, decrease it by a certain amount, we're going to like put the budget towards.
Oh, should I make the motion?
Wait, we got Theodore just raised his hand. Theodore?
Go ahead.
I'll be honest, I'm not really comfortable with the such a reduction, if any. For 2 reasons. I feel like 50% is just, I feel like it's just too easy of a number that we've just created, like, oh, we'll just slash in half. Like, we don't need to cripple this body when any extra dollars can help them better serve the students. Also, like what our alumni rep mentioned, this goes back to the students. Like, it's not like this is like a third party marketing agency or any association or company of that sort. Like, this is one of the oldest institutions within this university. This is the Daily Bruin, the same Daily Bruin that were so kind to give us interviews and put our names out there during elections. And so I would say just really reconsider whether we do need to slash this at all. I don't think it's to the best benefit. That's just what I feel. I don't think it's, especially considering like the 50%, I feel like it was just so easy to, yeah, like, oh, we'll just cut it in half. Why specifically 50%? I don't know. I don't think it's that wise of a decision.
Okay, thank you, Theodore. Phoebe, I see you got your hand raised.
I just want to mention that the 50% is not 50% of all of election board's budget. It is 50% of the Daily Bruin advertising specifically. And if we look further in the Daily Bruin budget, like, we didn't even talk about the itemization of the graphics. And there's like money supposedly allocated for like stamps and stuff like that. Like, those are things that like I question, because, you know, it doesn't seem like, you know, stamps are something that are used by elections board often currently, but like, I agree that maybe that could be allocated somewhere else. This is specifically about like advertising that didn't seem very effective to the student body, and specifically regarding like, you know, funding the Daily Bruin. I'm not like saying that the Daily Bruin is like not worth like getting the money. Like I really respect the Daily Bruin like staff and students. I think it's important to support them. But I think if we're allocating this to elections board to get the elections to have the most success, if that's not the way that voter turnout is like most like effective to like gaining through those advertisements, I think that should be looked at differently. But I did look at the 2018 to 2019 numbers again. And it seemed like if that's like the finalized number, assuming like on the website, they had expenditures around like $20,749. I added up the expenditures on the eBoard tab besides the stipends for them. And I think it totaled to around like 23,000. I think 25% would make that the next year budget pretty like relatively like closer to that 2018 to 2019 expenditure. So perhaps like 50% is a little drastic. If we do want like a more successful elections, like maybe they will be able to use that money more effectively in the future. But I still think it's important to recognize that, you know, some of the dollars might not be like spent the most effectively. And I think other offices that don't necessarily have as much of a budget can use that money to provide stipends to like their directors and like executive board and stuff.
Perfect. And just one thing I just want to mention in looking back on some of the older cost is the assistance line of what was a lot smaller as to what they were giving as stipends. So they had more to give to the other areas. But yeah, I agree. And I think that's where, and Jessica did mention that 8,500 was spent on advertising, and there's still a few recs outstanding for social media ads. So I could do the numbers right now for the 25% and see what that looks like.
Milan, yeah, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of go off of what VP said. I was also looking at the 2018 through 2019, I think, election that Patty kind of projected for us. I noticed that there was, I think, 17,000 left over. I'm not sure if that's the right number, but that's the one that I remember. So I was wondering if like we could scale that maybe to get a more accurate, like kind of if we were to cut it down, how much we should actually like kind of cut these fees down for the elections board, and maybe the breakdown of the 2019 election, just so that we know like where they spent specific things. So like if they actually use, like if the Daily Bruin actually used all of their funds for that year, and if there's something else that resulted in the $17,000 just surplus in elections board.
Sure, I can show you, kind of explain it in a little more detail. This is actually the year before, but I'll go back to the previous year. So they received 37,000. I think they did add a couple additional board members, and that's why the assistance line has gone up in more recent years. They spent on advertising related, so it's Daily Bruin advertising for the most part, but it can be other forms of advertising. 12 that year, and then expenditures for campaigns around 4, and then facilities around 750, and then assistance around 9. Let me go back to the year prior. So that's how it's broken up. And then here we have the assistance line was fairly small. 5,000 towards advertising, then candidate expenditures, and then facilities around that 750 is pretty consistent. That's essentially that 750 is what is that called? That is usually the cost of the My UCLA and perhaps one event or so. That's where that's pulled from.
I think there's also, sorry to cut in a little bit, it also says like available, the $17,000.
Yep. So this could be, this could be possibly two things. So see how this is a flat rate of 6,000 is available. That's probably the My UCLA that didn't get the bill in time, because you have to, If it doesn't get to us by the closing, then it comes out of the next year, or we have to expense it or accrue it to then get funded out the next year. So the 6,000, it's very similar to what the My UCLA bill is. So that would be my guess as to what that would be. I'd have to go further down and really dig into the audit to get the exact detail. But this would be at the end of this fiscal year. We try and process everything we can, what had been expended prior to that closure.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
But yeah, I feel like we should make a determination. I think we've talked in a lot of detail. So
yeah, we're about to get to that now. So
Okay.
basically, if someone wants to motion to cut it, then can you make a motion to cut it? And then after that, we'll actually vote on the budget.
Yeah, motion to cut the election board advertising budget by 25%.
I second that.
All right, Eliana motions, Phoebe seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. All abstaining, please raise your hand. Sarah, is that a new hand?
No, I'm putting it down.
Okay, and all against, please raise your hand. All right, so by a vote of 11 to 0, it's approved to slash their daily brewing budget by 25%.
So I already made that adjustment. I will show you just so I can show you it's been completed. So I made the adjustment here, which then I also just adjusted the amount here. And then the bottom line went down to 42,470. And that then brings the total budget. Again, this is your income and expenses. So that brings your total to 26, would then make it 2890. That will be distributed between the 9 councils.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Patty. I appreciate it. Okay, so I guess now we can actually vote on the budget. If no one has any other questions or concerns, can I get a motion?
I move to approve the budget.
Can I get a second?
I second.
I heard Eliana. So
I can be Sarah. I think she did it.
All right, Sarah. Okay. Theodore motions, Sarah seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Has Anna been able to connect yet? Because I guess she hasn't been voting. All right. So by a vote of 11 to 0, the budget is approved for the 2022-2023 year. All right, awesome.
Everyone.
Yeah, thank you for everyone that put work in for that in the presentation and asking all the questions and being very engaged. That's very important. Okay, so now that we are done with the old business, now we're getting to new business. And I think we have a resolution from Eliana.
Thank you so much, Carl. So this is a resolution on let me share my screen. This is a resolution regarding the free loan program. Could you please enable participant screen sharing? Thank you. So this is a resolution on the free loans program, interest-free loans, which I mentioned, getting $30 million for expansion and interest-free loans for California public university students who are facing stuff like homelessness, food insecurity, housing insecurity, and general difficult expenses, and who have incomes which are equal or less than 2.5 times the poverty line. So it's a very important step because we all know the debt trap that students face and the adversities, people going hungry, people living in their cars or in other places that aren't meant for a person to live in. So screen sharing still is not enabled. It would really help if you could either do it or pull up a resolution yourself. Whoever is in charge of such things. Is it Jessica, Carl, Mylan?
Yeah, Milan, can you share screen and show the resolution?
Thank you.
Oh yes, I got it.
Perfect. Great work, Mylan, Carl, appreciate it. So let me just read, and by the way, this resolution, we'll actually be sending it to the California State Legislature, so it's actually gonna go somewhere to get our voices and the voices of our constituents, most importantly, heard. So, whereas 6% of UCLA students are homeless at some point in their time at UCLA. Whereas throughout California, 1 in 5 community college students, 1 in 10 California State University students, and 1 in 20 University of California students are homeless. Whereas 37% of UCLA students, and nearly 50% of all California college students are food insecure. Whereas, despite the success of the UCs and CSUs in growing and thriving, thank you, Carl. Who wants to be a co-sponsor right now? My apology for not getting them earlier. Thanks, appreciate it. Thank you so much, appreciate you people. You are the best, all of you. Let me put you down now. So, Mylan, thank you so much, wow. Mylan, I'm having a hard time getting into this one now. You mind writing down everybody?
Yes. Do I have access? I think so. Yes, I can write them all down.
Thanks. So yeah, it'll be Phoebe, Juan, Alicia, Sarah, you, and me. Thanks. And apologies for the delays here.
I added the co-sponsors, and then I can write your name as a sponsor after,
Thanks.
so that you can read it all out. Yes.
That's amazing. Whereas, despite the success of the UCs and CSUs in thriving and growing for many decades without charging tuition, and despite the aim of the California Master Plan to keep the UCs and CSUs tuition free, the UCs and CSUs now charge a high and frequently increased tuition rate, which is very burdensome for many students. Whereas 66% of college students have gone without course materials because they couldn't afford them, 19% have to factor textbook costs into decisions about which courses to take, which hinders their ability to get the best possible education, and 11% have skipped meals to pay for textbooks. Whereas interest-free loans allow students to quickly get money to cover the aforementioned and other expenses, we pay the loan in fairly small monthly repayments over up to 3 years and avoid being caught in a debt trap due to the high interest rates many lenders charge. Whereas the Jewish Free Loan Association is a reputable organization which has been serving Los Angelinos of all religions, ethnicities, and races since 1904, and which has been serving students since the 1980s. Whereas, due to the ongoing economic impact of the COVID pandemic, inflation, the housing crisis, the textbook oligopoly, and the holes in our social safety net, college students have a tremendous need for free loans, which the Jewish Free Loan Association and other social service agencies need help meeting. Whereas one of the roles of the California State Legislature is to make sure that people are not subjected to homelessness, hunger, and other forms of deprivation due to circumstances beyond their control, and to ensure that everyone who wants a college education can get one without being forced to drop out or face deprivation and educational hurdles due to poverty and financial insecurity. Whereas free loans are an effective way to help people because once a free loan fund is created, it has tremendous staying power due to the 99.5% of borrowers who will pay their loans. And while there should not be any shame in accepting any kind of needed help, many people feel more dignified taking a form of assistance if they will directly repay. Whereas California's Assembly, Senate, and Governor are currently allocating funds for the remainder of 2022 and the first half of 2023. Whereas Assembly members Al Maratsutsi, Christine Garcia, Mark Berman, Vince Fong, Miguel Santiago, Jesse Gabriel, Jose Mardina, Kim Grayson, Richard Bloom, and State Senators Josh Newman, Stephen Glazer, Monique Limon, Ben Allen, and Sidney Kamliger requested that as part of this budgeting process, the California Assembly and Senate allocate $30 million to provide free loans for low-income college students. Whereas California's, State Assembly and Senate have not yet allocated funds to provide free loans for low-income college students, but they will have the opportunity to do so in August 2022. Therefore, let it be resolved that the Undergraduate Students Association Council urges all of California State Assembly members and senators to do everything in their power to ensure that this August, the state of California will allocate $30 million of funding for free loans for low-income college students.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eliana. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate how supportive you've been on everything.
Awesome. All right. So Eliana just did a great job of reading her resolution out. Can we get a motion?
I move to approve this resolution.
All right. Can we get a second?
I second.
All right. Theodore motions, Phoebe seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, Bob.
Everyone, I cut out for a hot second.
You're fine. By motion of by a vote of 11 to 0, the resolution passes. Thank you so much, Eliana.
Thank you so much to everybody for being so supportive on this. Really appreciate it. And if this could go up, thank you, Daniela. Appreciate you. Appreciate all of you. And if this could go up on USAC website, thank you so much, Sarah. This could go up on the USAC website quickly. That'd be lovely. So then I'll just be able to send this link over to the state legislature.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. I'm very grateful for all of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eliana. All right. Yeah, Jessica said she'll ask the webmaster to get it up this week. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's all we have. I know we've been on Zoom for like 2 hours now. So once again, thank you so much for coming, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great summer. We're going to join this meeting now at 8:38.